Welcome everyone to the launch for the fabulous Untold Fortunes by Zoe Mitchell. It's an amazing book and it grabbed my attention when we had our open submissions period. It was one of a very small handful that caught my eye straight away. That's made me ping, my spidey senses were tingling. I'm going to drop a link. For those who don't have a copy and would like one, I'm going to drop a link to Zoe's book in the chat and you can order it if you like. Here we go. It is an excellent, excellent book. We have some incredible guests here to join us this evening who are going to read as part of the celebrations. And our very first guest is Dean Rhetoric. Dean Rhetoric is a poet currently living in Manchester. His full-length collection, Foundry Songs, was highly commended in the Forward Prizes, and I'm going to drop a link to Dean's book in the chat as well. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Amanda and Jude, and thank you, Zoe, for having me part of this amazing launch. Very, very fortunate to be here, and just checking out the press itself. Just so many cool books I need to add to my list. There's one of Kate's that I haven't got. I've got most of Kate's, but I haven't got. I'm looking forward to adding theirs to my collection as well. So very excited about that. And
Awesome.
yes, thank you for having me as the first part of this launch of Zoe's incredible collection. I'll take up about 10 minutes of your time, that's all. And then we get to some other wonderful poets as well. The first poem I'd like to share, if that's okay, is from a Broken Sleep anthology, Broken Sleep Books in the UK. And it's an anthology on masculinity, stereotypes of masculinity, challenge what masculinity actually is. And it has a hell of a lot of content in there. It's a wonderful, wonderful book with a lot of great artists in there. I was very fortunate to have one in there. The poem I'm going to read from this is called Here's One I Made Earlier. Okay. No one attended the funeral of the ventriloquist. Even the puppet had a scheduling conflict and pulled out at the last minute. And yet, when first pronounced dead, the man's thumb and forefinger could still be seen clinging to the coattails of the doll. To find needy without conjuring the image of a paramedic playing tug-of-war with a cadaver over a toy. Define a toy as anything that someone has been able to speak, making using only their hands. I once drew a sofa falling above a psychiatrist on the day of his retirement. All I gave him for protection was a prescription. I wanted to make it clear that in the ways of committing unnecessary cruelty, I was as culpable as the next. That when something with two voices dies, I was sure of what slid from the stool and what sat there waiting with a smile. I'm not asking for silence here, just a brace of cuts and one throat hushed, a few milligrams softer, please. Thank you. I really recommend picking this up. There's some really interesting work in there from a lot of really fascinating poets. And if you, like me, I love the classics, love all the poets, but if you like seeing new voices in poetry that are sort of doing really interesting new things, I can't recommend it enough. So thank you for that.
It looks like really quite a hefty book too,
It's
Dean.
a very hefty book. There's so many poets in it. You really get your value for money. 330 odd pages and well, with everybody, really fascinating stuff. Cannot recommend it enough. Great bunch of people. Next poem I wouldn't mind reading is from my first pamphlet before my full length, from the very catchy title of Cancer and Pop Punk. Jude, you have a poem in the anthology. I bookmark every time I read it. I bookmark where I stop because I want to keep going because I didn't want to read it all in one go. I will make a point to get yours in there as well. Congratulations, Jude, by the way. I hope you enjoyed the collections as much as I did. It's fascinating work. This pamphlet is from a collection called Cancer and Pop Punk. This is more to do with grief, losing a loved one. It's sort of a long, cohesive train of thought. It's not so much sections of poems as sort of one long poem, but I'm going to read a piece from it. The Royalties from this actually go to Widowed and Young All Author Writers, which is a charity that helps anybody under the age of 50 who has lost a loved one unexpectedly. It helps create communities, helps get them out doing things while dealing with their grief. It's a really fascinating charity, by the way. So here's a section from this that I've written. Okay. No, I didn't want to sing along to that song on the jukebox about love being a battlefield with you. It was my first date in over 2 years. And before I commit to that kind of intimacy, I need to imagine you dying just to see if the world still happens without you there. It didn't. People used to think that before death, a swan would sing. They confused its panic for beautiful music, the way it called for help melodic, despite the fear that ripped. Such a friendly voice, by the way, that tells us when it's stopped and joined recording. Poem I'm going to read first from Foundry Songs is called "And In Come the Toxins," and it's about where we used to work in the work area. There were specific environmental rules, rightfully so, that the toxins in the work environment on the factory floor cannot be let outside because they're so toxic. However, the people that do 12-hour shifts in there, it's perfectly fine for them to breathe it. And, this is in relation to that. And afterwards, I'll go for a handful of poems from this and just say a big thank you afterwards. But this is called "An In Come the Toxins." There are over 20 known causes of respiratory disease in the average industrial furnace, and I'm 7 of them. Ha! Seriously, though. A letter came today imploring me to take my breathing issues in good humour. It can be fixed, and for only the cheap, cheap price of, well, it's not about the lack of money. It's the characters I've created in this off Broadway rendition of organs. If you press your fingers into your skin a certain way and your blood circulation is bad enough, as you let go, it resembles a kind face, a friend, a troubled life coach who passes through this oxygen gorging, piggy bone marrow before fading away into ambivalence. This dadicky chest clenches to their aimless ways like a 2 a.m. jealousy. Good sir, your letter found us, and we thank you for your concern. Of all the ambulances you've sent, it's by far the funniest. Next concept. This poem is called Strike. The government claims that industrial action has become the shop-worn chandelier from which all working class romantics hang their galaxies. But I don't care what those Bullingdon fools might say. Call in sick and cause dissent with me. New lust, you're a bloody wrong un. The way you set picket lines around the bedpost, naked and dangerous as a petrol bomb in Parliament. I want you to rise up, all come dizzy and magnificent in the morning. Lock the door and burn the curtains. Let the neighbours be afraid. This next poem is called Euthanize the Creature. By the way, I'll say at this point, very fortunate that this ended up in the Ford Prizes, this collection. However, I always like to say this at readings, even if individuals in America, I know there's UK friends here as well. If you love poetry, or you're just getting into poetry and you love getting books, but you know, we've all been there, you're struggling financially or anything, just feel free to reach out to me, send me an email. I'll make sure you get a copy. You don't have to pay. It's not a problem. Just times are hard. I get it. It's all good. So just I want to say that first of all. This poem's called Euthanize the Creature. Much like the right kind of sex, I smell good in the unwashed ambience of a Sunday morning, taking a shortcut through the churchyard and getting home on whatever God doesn't keep. There are those who will never catch the scent of it on their tongues, and for that I'm as sympathetic as a hallway. There are nights that I too have stretched my palms across the neighbouring body to mine and convinced myself the innocuous hum of indifference travelling between us was some kind of beautiful song in a foreign language. There are times too that I have fantasized of a call for help at the foot of the stairs as the hallway and I remain silent. The both of us, on their backs since birth, have no business asking anything remain unbroken. This next poem is called Psalm of Bandages. Went to several very religious schools. no problem with religion, not a rant on it at all. It's just, but growing up in a religious school, formative years, and just understanding feelings and individuals and the sort of weird shame associated with that growing up in religious schools. We needed a distraction, and God was as good as any. When we hid under chapel stairs, forehead on forehead, when your skin was too itchy and tight for your swelling chest, you were God's mint filter, I was her ashtray, my humble bloodied knee staining your Sunday best as you slit your finger over Corinthians and mixed us as one. This was not the first time we've both been so carelessly alive. We'd crushed leaves, tied together at the stem, sat formless in pews between the lustrous punch-ups of rain and the melody it made on the windows, just to destroy something wonderful. There was no salvation come morning, only the light, naked in our shaking hands, sick at the thought of reflecting us. Thank you. The final poem is called Foundry Song. It's about a friend of mine who I used to work with, and unfortunately, he lost a couple of his fingers on a night shift when I was with him, and it was the indifference he had when the medical staff were explaining to him in the hospital. I heard this story later on from other people that were there, that they were just, after they rushed into hospital, they were discussing how it would take months of rehabilitation to connect the tissue, the nerve ends, get his fingers working again. And he literally's like, I've got a shift to do. I've got overtime booked. Just cut it off. It's fine. I could do the job without it. And it was just about that sort of acceptance of something so crazy happening and not wanting to go through that rehab to save just the tip of his finger that he deemed pretty useless at that time in his life. Yeah. So this is called Foundry Song. He was too proud for fear, never moved from his station. Instead, the foundry bowed in respect as the crane snapped, crushing him against the bricks. He wouldn't move, barely acknowledging the fingers it took. There is a chain link branded into my bicep from where I once turned my back on that which wasn't done with me and felt it had to put me in my place. When it's my turn against the wall, I won't be so dismissive of the parts that slow me down. When I'm out of my ways to reduce myself, I'll leave a month's rent in advance, press the slack of that chain to my waist, and wait patiently to be scrapped. When I accept my lot, scatter me obnoxious, mold me into something a child can throw at the next departing train. Help the young ones to understand nothing passes through here unaffected. Thank you. Other than reading, that's me done, but I do want to just quickly say, please, that Zoe is a wonderful human being who I met on a weird sort of chance that we were both going to the same poetry gig. I believe the first thing she said to me was she was very grateful that I didn't end up being a murderer or anything, because we did sort of take a chance just randomly meet in a bookshop. It turned into a brilliant friend since then. I'm such a huge fan of Zoe's work all these years. Anyone who's here probably knows not only how great Zoe is as a writer, but how wonderful she is with supporting other writers, championing other writers, and just being in general a wonderful person. And I'm so happy to see Untold Fortunes being put out in the world. When I read it, I did not. When I read it, I was like, I was such a huge fan of Haga first collection. I was like, I don't know how Zoe's going to top that, and she did. It is absolutely staggering, and I just wouldn't recommend enough people to purchase it. And Zoe's going to take over the world one day when she's willing. It's there waiting for her. Sorry, Zoe, it's a lot of pressure, I know, but such a huge fan. And Kate, they are just. I think I said to Kate actually for the last probably 10 years, I've been eager to do a reading with Kate. Kate has been part of the literary scene for so long, so many different wonderful online journals, physical journals, so many collections through any independent press that's respected. Kate's pretty much, they've been through that process. And I'm just so grateful to be able to be part of this and to celebrate these wonderful authors. So just, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure, Dean. And that's some pretty ringing endorsements there for Zoe and Kate. Your reading was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Did
I'm
I go
just
over
going to
time? I hope I didn't.
repaste.
Sorry.
Wasn't looking, I'll be honest. I'm too mesmerized by
Oh, thank you.
by the reading. So I'm just going to drop that link to Dean's book back in the chat there again because we had to sort of change recordings halfway through that, which I'm hoping isn't going to stuff with our meeting too much. Um, Thank you, Dean. Thank you so much for joining us and for the magnificent blurb that you wrote for Zoe's book too. That was wonderful. Next up in our little evening together, we have the lovely Kate Garrett. Kate Garrett, she, they, is a neurodivergent writer with witchy ways and a folklore, history, and horror obsession. Their work can be found online and in print, including their pamphlet To Feed My Woodland Bones, published by Animal Heart Press in 2019. Kate also edits Mugwort magazine, an online home for writing from the edges, and is a postgraduate researcher in English literature at the University of Birmingham, focusing on hauntology and the work of Daphne du Maurier. She lives in wild and wonderful Shropshire with her husband, children, and beloved elderly cat. Welcome, Kate.
Hello. I hope this is working okay. I sometimes have strange problems with Zoom. Can you hear me okay and everything? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you and see you. Well, I can hear you
Oh.
and see you.
Right. Yeah, to start with, thank you, Zoe, for the privilege of blurbing your book, which is amazing. I'll second everything Dean said about Zoe's book, Zoe's writing, Zoe being lovely. I think the first time I came across your work, you'd actually submitted it to one of my it's a witch anthology I did sort of
Yeah.
many years ago, and everyone who I had like as a reader at the time, everyone read it and sort of was unanimously like, that's disgusting. We love it. Because it was very like very it's like this is witchy. Like it was so good. Yeah, and it's I haven't fact checked, so I can't actually remember the title of the poem, but I remember everything that happened in it. And it was so good. And that's how memorable Zoe's work is. So once again, everyone go buy Untold Fortunes because it's even better. Um, but kind of less grim in most ways. That poem was spectacular. Right. And yeah, and Dean as well. It's weird because a few months ago we were sort of idly chatting and saying it would be great if we read together and like all three of us, and now we are. So that thank you, Zoe, for making that happen, and Animal Heart for making that happen. Um, Right. I'm going to start with a couple of poems from To Feed My Woodland Bones, which is my Animal Heart pamphlet. It's very short though, so I'm not going to read many from it, or it'll be like half the book. Um, but
I've dropped a link to Kate's chat with us in the chat. So if you wish to order To Feed My Woodland Bones, you can find a link there.
yeah. Um, So it's a really tiny pamphlet and it's about a changeling in the human world. And it's sort of semi-autobiographical fiction. And a changeling, of course, is a sort of fairy or otherworldly child left in place of a human child. So that's the context for these two poems I'm going to read. They all sort of have roots in fairy lore and folklore. Um, An elf cannot return to the other world if they have partaken in human delight. And one night, near the end of a century of summers, in a fourth floor apartment rented by the boy with the elemental magic book, the smiling girl to my right passed me a vessel of water and smoke. I inhaled the bitter, sickly sweet. Their time became like time I knew too well, slowed down to make room for invocations. I drifted from the circle with the girl and stroked her hair and said she was exquisite like a cat, and she held me round my waist and laughed before I fell, not to earth, but the carpet, sprawled, a field of daisies hoping for the best. She handed me a drink and said she must have forgotten my secrets. She never knew them. She didn't give any of hers away, but we kissed and talked until the others appeared, pulled me up. Time to go, they said, but I wanted to stay. I couldn't get back. And I have to read the last poem in this pamphlet because my wedding anniversary is Halloween, and I wrote this poem in this changeling story about when she got engaged to her human love, and it's called Pixie Led. If you're pixie led, it's like, or pisky led in Cornwall, it's like, a fairy's got you twisted around while you're out hiking. And in this case, it's kind of the changeling who's a little bit pisky led. A bottle of Merlot is a gift to celebrate these weeks that feel like years, to celebrate the passing of years as minutes. Chansons resurrect the structure of this house. We lend our pulses to the walls on borrowed time, and in the bottom of his glass, I can tell the future. In the bottom of the glass, I can turn his head to the west while he thinks he's facing north. In the bottom of the glass, this encounter is something he saw in a dream. In the bottom of the glass, the sediment forms a crescent moon, and he says he sees it clearly too. There is no mist over the moon when I look out the window, but he has changed his plans for me. There is no mist over the moon, and he hands me a ring, silver knotted around a sliver of aurora. A sliver of aurora, like me, a being in a beam who fell through the atmosphere, made solid on contact. In the gemstone, in the ring, I can't see the future. There is no mist over the aurora, but we're too far south. In the bottom of the glass, I see my love in the rising mist around a crescent moon, and I tell him yes. I'm moving on to everything else is basically going to be kind of spooky, which I hope is okay. Zoe did instruct us to be not instruct, but said like, we're all a bit spooky people, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's got to be done.
I've got this little pamphlet called Deeds that came out in 2023 from Roswell Publishing, and they're all horror poems, and they all were written around phrases from John Donne or John Dowland, it's like a incredibly convoluted backstory because they're like not even, yeah, like Renaissance, Elizabethan, Jacobean period poet and composer. The poems have nothing to do with the titles, where I got the titles from, but that's where they came from. So we've got vampires and witches, and then I'll move on to something else. This is Promised Wine, Hidden Gold. Sink teeth, break skin, avoid the sun. Fold yourself away against morning as dreams replay the moment your existence changed into this one. Holes punched in the autumn so you could see through to winter, creep further than summer and drain to a halt. The sluggish blood a heartbeat dirge, where the oaths they once made glittered in each smoky glass. Now the novelty wears thin, like the soles of your shoes or the points of your smile. I just think vampires might get a bit bored with their lives at times, and that's kind of where, like, if you're immortal, it can't be that exciting for long. Anyway, this is Hag's Delight. Drop down, slip from the trail where a tunnel of earth carries you to the river. It is a clear, cold night lit by ice and stars. You cut through the layers of this world with a laugh like wood splitting. You have a hill for flying, a month with 2 moons, and a mouthful of blood. You need only a house of sticks and stones on the outskirts of the town. They keep a distance, uninvited, just how you like it, but want to learn how to sit with eyes closed, listening as dew becomes frost. You remember, life seemed so gray when your cheeks were still pink. There are so many colors their eyes cannot yet see. Right.
Gosh, Kate, you stick those landings so very, very well.
Oh, thank you. I hope it makes up for the absolute, like, to use Dean's words, waffle, which Dean didn't do, but I absolutely waffle, so I apologize. Yeah, thank you so much. I've got a poem about Bloody Mary, not the Queen, Mary Tudor, but the sleepover game, as 'tis the season, so it's from her perspective, and it's called Once More with Feeling. I'm exactly where they expect me to be, but hope I'm not. Alone on this side of the glass at midnight, I turn to the creaking of the door. 5 girls push one into the darkness. I hear giggles, gasps, see a torch burning cold. I'm the bad news they wouldn't want for themselves, but don't mind telling. They, like decades of others, call me Mary, the only name left of many. I stare at the girl who sees only her painted reflection, eyes big and blue, like a plastic doll. They don't make children like they used to. She utters the 2 words of my name 6 times, stops, lip twitching. My own face has been hidden for years stuck in here. Say it, I whisper. Once more is all it takes. And Bloody Mary never came out of the mirror for me, and I was also not haunted by the ghost in this poem. This is the corner grave, Old Cemetery, Owensville, Ohio. Rain had worn down her name, left a few letters and a stone leaning low after a century of winters. I pretended to know her, Elizabeth, wife of blank. Said good morning every day before school, though she'd long ago sifted down to dust and bones beneath the roots of our village. I invented a tragic death, looked for signs, willed her to haunt me. I imagined skeletons with high collars and tangled hair hiding behind the dresses in my closet. Halloween. I dressed in cream linen, bobbed for apples, waited for Elizabeth, scanned the fields for see-through shapes on our hayride. She didn't show, but I still insisted the handprint in red paint smacked against our shed window was hers. And I feel like it's not right to like sort of have spooky women writers without this. I wanted to read this poem, which is about it's like in honor of Shirley Jackson, and she's just, you know, fantastic. And uh the title is a sort of, it's basically an astrology reference, because I found out she had an 8th house moon, and that kind of means nothing to most people, but I got very excited and a poem happened. So it's called A Fire Moon Reflected on the Water. When the moon goes to Pluto's house for tea, they talk about the haunted. You sit with them taking notes, waiting. Such unfortunate women, you among them, raised to keep Hestia's hearth. But some were born lucky, with Hecate's heart, spotting evil like a smudge on a lens, sideways in suburbia. Mistaken mother, witch alone, wrapping our shadows in plain brown paper. You never turn the lights on when we let them out. When the moon is in Pluto's house, the black dogs stop howling long enough to listen to your conversation. Thank you. That one's a bit strange, but I just, you know, I feel like Shirley would get it. I have, wow, actually, just two, do I have time for 2 more? They're not very long. I
Sure,
will read. Sorry? Do,
sure.
okay.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I just, has it been 10 minutes? I'm trying to keep track. They're just kind of, they're both sort of, yeah, they're not very long, and I'll just read one out. Yeah. This is a remember. It's a mug, he said, so I should go ahead and use it. It's not a shrine after all. Spiced Merlot steams inside as I blow over the red rim, and 6 thin scarlet spirals glow on wheat-painted porcelain. The sky explodes, celebrating a revolution we haven't joined. We never open our invitations. My warm breath mingles with smoke in the air, drinking in the silhouettes forged by bonfire flames. The whistle of a Catherine wheel repeats her name, above paper poppies, specks of crimson in the dark. I imagine blood on my hands like a robin in the snow. Some people read poems. I read the scars on his knuckles from long before I knew him. He once lit matches just to watch them burn. He had it all to come in a fast forward you can only see by looking behind. Those last desperate weeks and the phone call. She's gone. The hate glows through my gloves from this mug bequeathed to me by bad timing. I sip the hot wine and watch rockets reflect in his eyes. The bangs and pops keep the rhythm for a silent rhyme that repels us towards winter. Remember, remember, every year dies in December. It's a kindness we often forgot. Because it's that time of year, these last year, like, but that's about, it's kind of like an experience from my past, and the person from my past. And this is also about a person from my past, but it also references Delia Derbyshire, who is really responsible for the Doctor Who theme, but she doesn't get a lot of credit for that. And he didn't give her credit either. So Delia Derbyshire teaches music in the next life. He is a sequence repeating now, a recording on the atmosphere, this impression of life, somewhere, a sound, a credit to her. He would not recognize her in all he made of his time here. Her name never crossed his lips, but hung over his art. I am not a credit to him. Alone, I will not let him follow me. He has not been where I am. She shows him waves, and where to place his hands in a synapse without harm. How to round out his emptiness into a crystal ball and find the boy he lost inside it. Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me to read, Zoe, and for listening, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining us, Kate, and thank you for being so generous with your beautiful blurb for Zoe's book. It's been so lovely to be working sort of alongside you again in these kinds of things. It was before the pandemic that your book came out, like that long ago. I can't, and it just feels like time has gone. But thank you for joining us today. Your reading was beautiful and kind of a lovely spooky segue. We chose this date because it feels nice and close to Halloween, which we thought fitted nicely with the kind of spooky witchy vibe that was going on with Zoe's book, and your poetry was a lovely segue into that. So thank you, Kate. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Zoe to step onto the stage. Let me read her bio. Zoe Mitchell has a PhD in creative writing. Her second collection, Untold Fortunes, considers the figure of the witch in history and mythology and how this relates to the female experience. She loves exploring the darker underside of myths and forgotten women from history to find the real power of the witch in the modern world. Welcome, Zoe.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you especially, Dean and Kate. I'm just a big fan. I did this whole thing. I wrote a whole book so I could have this event and get you guys here as well. So, and absolutely worth it. I would do it all again. So thank you so, so much. So I've prepared a few poems that I've pulled out from my collection. The other thing I've got to say that I was admiring of Dean was how slickly he was moving through his books. I have post-its, which is very non-magical, and I apologize for that, but I don't know how everyone finds the right page otherwise.
There is a beauty to an analog lifestyle. I'm not going to argue.
It's not very witchy. So the whole book is divided into phases of the moon, and this was something that I did as part of my PhD. So before I looked into what it meant, what each phase of the moon meant for our lives, I wrote down the dates, and on those days I wrote a draft of a poem. And only when I'd finished all those poems did I go and find out what the phases of the moon meant. And they matched almost exactly, which is a bit spooky. And either I'm just very basic and obvious, or I'm very aligned to the moon, which I choose to believe because I'm a poet. So of course I am. So this is one of those moon poems, and it's the first quarter because we are in the first quarter at the moment. So this should be the one that speaks the most to everyone here. There is grace in the night sky. Look up, make plans, imagine what life would be like if it were fair. Now accept that it isn't. Book the ticket anyway. Even if you don't have the time or energy, apply. Write it all down, solemn as a childhood promise, and tick tasks off the list one by one. The stars weep for you, so don't slow down for anything as insignificant as your own tears.
Fantastic.
Okay, so the next one I'm going to read is a part way. I mean, this whole thing is sort of a justification as to why someone would do something quite so mad as do a whole PhD about witchcraft, although it was a lot of fun. But I got asked why witches a lot. And the truth is, it was a really difficult time in my life, and my mum was really unwell, and I wanted powerful women surrounding me because it was incredibly tough at the time. So this is one of the ways that I explain why I chose to focus on witches at that time. And this is called There Is a Poem That I Want to Write. There is a poem that I want to write that will be filled with swirling witches spinning sulphur and cobwebs around a woman until she breaks their spell. In this poem, she remembers her own inimitable power. She smiles once at the hovering hags at their work, and then, like a cat, shrugs them off. She will brush dust and ash from her clothes and walk herself into this poem that I want to write because my heart wants to feel that triumph. I want to walk with this woman into white space. I think that also reflects my belief that poetry is a form of magic, and possibly the closest I will get to any form of magic is what language can do and what poets can do. One of the things that I did, so my book is called Untold Fortunes. That's obviously got a magical theme, but it's also about untold stories of women, because those stories often disappear. And this is about a woman that I read about called Beatrice Schilling, who lived in the 40s. And she invented a valve for British fighter planes that basically won the Second World War. And you'd think we would know that without trawling through lots of history books, because that is the truth. It made the planes unable to dive, and so once they could dive, they could outmaneuver the German fighters, and it genuinely did help with the war effort. But she was kind of mocked in her time. But my favorite, although she was kind of beloved by the pilots whose lives she saved, but my favorite fact about her was that she was a keen motorbike rider, and she met a man and fell in love, but she would not marry him until he was able to match her speed record on a racetrack on a motorbike, which I think is an excellent standard to have in life. But this is more about
Zoe, you kind of actually, like, I've got my list of questions beside me, and you've answered like the first 5 of them, which is fantastic.
waffle. We've all gone for the waffle today.
No, this is great. It means I don't have to ask questions. But how this sort of segues into the next question that was on my list. How did you find Beatrice Schilling?
I don't actually remember. I just go down lots of Wikipedia rabbit holes and lots of things that I just try and find. And if you try and find forgotten women, if you Google forgotten women during or whatever, you just find things. And then it's just, I mean, there's millions of them. So you just have to keep digging until you find something that really catches your attention. But it's a lot of Wikipedia rabbit holes to start with that give you a direction. Okay,
Cool.
so yeah, go on. Did you have another question?
No, I just you've pretty much answered what I was asking, because you found all these incredible women, and I was sort of wondering what drew you to them, because not all of their stories are this sort of story of Beatrice Schilling, you've got people like Belle Gunness, and Tonya Harding is in there as well. And I was just sort of wondering, like, how did you know that sort of you're someone I could write a poem about?
Well, I think,
You speak to me.
in all cases, I looked for powerful women and I tried to find some balance. It would be nice to promise that all powerful women are beautiful and kind and good, but the world is not like that. There are evil women just like there are evil men. So I wanted there to be some coverage, even if they're abhorrent, like Belle Gunness or Elizabeth Bathory, like there's awful women in history. And it's strange that they also get buried. And really, there was just something in the story. So, like Beatrice Schilling and setting her fiance a task, I really just loved that, the kind of humor and spark of it. The Tonya Harding one is very bizarre and probably not a good reason to write a poem, but I did it anyway, which was so I watched the film I, Tonya, which I really recommend. And there's a scene in that where they're trying to convey how much prejudice she faced because of her class. And they all looked down on her because she was poor, because her hair was wrong and her outfit was wrong. And when she was skating, her music was wrong. But the music she was playing was a ZZ Top song. And that was my dad's favorite band. So I was like, oh, I'm that person. I would go to a poetry night and be that person with the bad hair or the wrong clothes or whatever. So it was just that kind of connection. I can't skate at all, so it wasn't kind of the physical connection, but it was little things like that that would draw me to whoever it was that I wrote about, someone, and often that I could find a connection with. So like with Beatrice Schilling, you can see kind of all the promises of Camelot and the chivalry and the change in the way that she lived her life. With Tonya Harding, that she was kind of treated like a ugly stepsister from a fairy tale. So I kind of would try and do that kind of thing as well, like try and pull it and link it to those mythological figures to make them more real and to give another dimension to the women that I was writing about.
Awesome. To Beatrice, who
Yeah,
I Googled after I read your poem, and she was cool. She was so cool.
I know, exactly. I know. Everyone, see, she should be like a hero. Little girls should want to grow up and be Beatrice Schilling. So this is called, and this is the name of the invention that she had. So this is no disparagement of Beatrice Schilling, but it's called Miss Schilling's Orifice. The Merlin engine had the war disease, a distinct lack of magic. It would not allow men to dive or swoop away from an attack and left them in thrall to G-force as the flooded carburetor took them far away from any hope of Avalon. Young men in winged armor plummeted into oceans of fire and water. One brief shining moment of elemental awe before each spitfire and hurricane was caught by yawning gravity. The pilots learned too late that there never was a Camelot. Wartime women already knew this truth. One among them shrugged off the shackle of chivalry and with unrepentant brevity and a gruff demeanour, wearing oil-smeared overalls, changed the course of the war. Men laughed when she arrived at an airbase, but not for very long. They called her Tilly like the chugging army pickups they drove their troops around in, but never to her face. Miss Schilling, engineer, found a way to joust with German fuel injection using a modest brass thimble with a small hole that became her namesake. A woman who had already tinkered with her destiny had no problem fixing a simpler engine. Tool-laden, she braze-welded brass collars to the planes herself, not caring that she had no place at the officer's table. Off she would roar on her Norton motorbike, heading for the next airbase, leaving the pilots in her dust.
Yeah, she was awesome.
Yeah,
What a
she
hero.
really I want t-shirts of her. I want like people to really love her because she's just great. This next one that I chose, so another sort of forgotten woman, or forgotten unless you kind of really dig into the history of tarot, is Pixie Coleman Smith, who is the artist that did all the art for the tarot deck, probably the famous tarot deck, the Waite tarot deck that you think of when you think of tarot. That was Pixie Coleman Smith. She hardly got paid for it. It's not till much later she was even credited for it. But the fascinating thing about her, or I think fascinating for poets, is that she had synesthesia. So as well as being an artist, she had this sense of color and experience that is beyond what we have. And all of that's kind of infused into the tarot deck. So this is called Sensational, the Art of Pixie Coleman Smith. The future sounds green. Artichokes, Brussels sprouts, parakeets, pears, rosemary, frogs, leprechauns, tourmaline, alligators, cucumbers, moss, grass, trees. The future feels yellow. Canaries, bananas, butter, big bird, sulfur, turmeric, post-it notes, submarines, Pac-Man, lemons, flames, cards, sun. The future smells blue. Orchids, peacocks, lagoons, smurfs, robin eggs, sad songs, Neptune, sapphires, blueberries, topaz, sea, sky, eyes. The future tastes red. Strawberries, tomatoes, phone boxes, roses, lipsticks, apples, stop signs, peppers, ketchup, fire engines, wine, blood, hearts.
Wow.
So this next one,
Out of
oh, go on, go for it.
Can I ask you another question? Out of all of these women, you've Medusa, Tonya Harding, Madame Blavatsky, Beatrice Schilling, Belle Gunness, Helen Duncan, Frances Farmer, Pixie Coleman Smith, and more. Out of all of those women, who do you think would be your favorite?
I don't know if I could pick a favorite. I mean, I wouldn't pick a favorite of any of the truly villainous women. So, you know, I think someone like Belle Gunness is fascinating because she went undetected because she was a woman, and particularly because she was considered an unattractive woman. So nobody thought men were disappearing at her farmhouse, and she murdered a lot of men. And she also murdered a lot of children. So I have some sympathy for her and for the system that she was living in, but I can't ever say that you know, I would condone that or put her up to be a hero. I think I love Beatrix Schilling, but I'm not brave enough for that. Or even Tonya Harding, as I say, I could like align with that class struggle that she had is something that I genuinely feel. And felt all through my PhD, where I worked all through my PhD, and I spoke to other students who had rich parents and rich partners who were stressed just doing a PhD, and I was doing mine alongside a full-time job and caring for my mum. So, you know, I could understand that sort of struggle, but I don't know that I could ever pick a favorite, to be honest. I would feel bad for all the others. So discount the evil ones because I don't want to pick them for their evilness. But all the good guys.
Do you think that those monstrous women were truly necessarily monstrous, or were they to a degree a product of the systems and culture that they were living in?
To a certain extent, they were, yes. Yeah. So, you know, that's how Belle Gunness got away with it. It's why she was written off in the first place. Oh, she's just a stout woman. No one's going to marry her. No, you know, just leave her to it, laugh at her. And this is what she becomes. So, in a way, she was created by the society that she lived in. Or someone like Helen Duncan, who was the last woman to be tried and convicted for witchcraft in the UK. And so I have some sympathy for that because that was in the 1940s. She wasn't hanged or anything. She was put in prison and then she was released. But so you'd have some sympathy for that kind of treatment. But at the same time, with Helen Duncan, she was asked not to give her readings because there were fears about war secrets. You know, it's understandable. She was trying to make a living, and she was giving all these readings and saying, I've got a reading from a warship that's been sunk, but of course at the time the War Office was trying to keep that quiet, so they asked her just to not do that, and she refused. So that's why they imprisoned her. So I think there's situations like that where women are in extreme situations and are often boxed in. I have more sympathy for Helen Duncan than for Belle Gunness, because I don't think anything really excuses murder. And the fact that during that same time that Helen Duncan was potentially putting lives at risk, Beatrice Schilling was off there trying to fix it. Of course, we can't all be engineers, but there's ways of breaking out of society without causing harm to others, I think.
Cool. What do you think that those, like some of those women obviously are not contemporary, what do you think that they would think of the world today and the treatment of women in it?
I think in some ways they'd be pleased, and in other ways they'd be horrified. You know, there's no doubt about it that, you know, I have a lot more rights and enjoy a lot more freedom than generations before me, and I feel very fortunate for that. But at the same time, you know, you see the way that culture changes and the way things are going and feel like they're going backwards in a lot of ways. And I think they would be horrified at that. You know, Beatrice Schilling fought for the right of any woman to jump on a motorcycle and live her dream, whether that's to be an engineer or a teacher or, you know, whatever you want to be. And I think, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think they see a lot of things don't change, because even in a more progressive society and a more polite on the surface society, I think there's still judgment about, particularly for a woman. So I'm on my own, and I feel that judgment sometimes. Oh, you never married. Oh, that's a shame. Not good enough. That's still there. And I think they would be quite sad about that. Like, oh, you've done all of this, but it's still down to that. So it doesn't matter that I've written 2 books or I've got a PhD or that I'm a kind person mostly and sometimes funny. And all of those things, it comes down to, do you have a husband though? Do you have an attachment that's male? You know, so I think there's still that part in the world that maybe they would be sad about, because a lot of them try to break free from that.
Indeed. Excellent. Read on, Zoe. What else have you
Okay, so
earmarked?
this next one, it's actually quite a really nice segue. I didn't know you were going to ask me that, but this is a great segue. So this is about a real witch who used to live on Dartmoor. Well, I don't know if she was a witch or just a witchy woman, but this is about a lady called Olga Hunt, who used to, she lived near Dartmoor, and she was often found on Dartmoor. And she basically used to go wandering around Dartmoor with a broomstick, scaring the living daylights out of people by jumping out at them and just being generally a bit spooky. And I kind of love that. So just the mischief of that, like completely harmless. She wasn't hurting anybody, but she'd probably give them the fright of their lives. And that kind of free spirit, I think, is really beautiful. And you need a bit more of that kind of just not giving a shitness of, like, just to hell with it. I'm just going to go and have some fun. So I really love the story of Olga Hunt. So this is sort of an imagining of encountering her. This is called Olga Hunt's Broomstick. I was 18, camping with friends on Dartmoor. Exams behind us. We knew everything then, thought our vivid certainty would last forever. We sat around a fire, poked at poorly baked potatoes, persevered with cheap sweet wine until it tasted of our laughter. Night gathered us closer, and we shared stories suited to the shadows, seeking a reason to clasp a cold hand and cluster in pairs. One boy told the tale of the hound-tore rocks, eyes bright swaggering as he recounted vicious dogs, tooth by sharp tooth. Ripping through the fabric of the stories in darkness, A woman appeared among us. Her wry, wrinkled face displayed fathomless age. Her eyes brimmed with ingenuity and mischief. She danced with a broomstick bridled across her shoulders, the husks of the brush tied on with coarse ribbons of bright colours. We were as still as the surrounding granite. She let out a cuckoo laugh and waltzed into the sinister black beyond the night sky, brandishing her broom at the moon. We each went to our separate tents after that. Now, I have a job I'm good at. I wear suits and earn promotions. Each working day, I am spat out by the hot mouth of the tube into a cool high-rise, beetling with indifference. On a day like so many before and ahead, the memory comes back to me full tilt. The taste of bad wine and first kisses, intense connections, flames licking at the dark. Much else has faded, but I would still swear that as she left us, I saw Olga Hunt take a quick, nimble step over her broomstick and quite impossibly take flight.
So cool.
So where am I
So
now?
who, if you were to write a follow-up to this book, Zoe, who would be on your list? Which woman would you write about next, do you think? Do you have any ideas?
No, well, I mean, I'm sort of playing around with ideas about what I want to write about next. And because, I was never going to say daisies and ribbons and I'm going to write a collection of love poems. The thing that I'm most interested in at the moment is cults. So I need to do more research into this. And I think I'm interested in cults because I see parallels with what's happening in the world. So the same way that I was looking for parallels of powerful women, I think like the divisions that you see online and in society have that sort of cult-like sense about them. A lot of the, really rabid, awful supporters, like there's nothing you can do to change their minds because they're sort of indoctrinated. So I don't know. But I think with that, there aren't many female cult leaders. There are some, but it's mostly men. And so I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm sort of exploring it at the moment. But it's a difficult thing just because, and it's nothing against men. It's just that I don't know about that. I don't write from that experience or understand it. So it will be something to do with women. But what I'm keen to do is avoid women being victims, which is unfortunately the majority of women and cults, the association is victims. So I'm just finding my way through that at the moment.
Cool. My last question, because you've answered so many of the ones that I had written down just with your talking. What do you want readers to come away from Untold Fortunes with?
I think first of all, go and find out about some of these women. I think find some magic in your life. Like lots of the poems in this collection are the result of me doing mad experiments. So it wasn't just experiments, I wonder what the moon means. I did experiments with tarot cards where I read my tarot cards every week for a year, recorded it all in a spreadsheet. And that's actually what Untold Fortunes is about. It's the result of that spreadsheet, which is a mad thing to do. I did mirror scrying. I did just tons of absolutely mad things, searching for magic. And I would say go find some magic in your life because it's out there. It's out there just if you go outside your door, and it's out and it's inside you as well. There is little sparks of magic. So I would say that's what I would want people to take from my book. Like enjoy the book, seek out the women, and then find the magic in your world. That would be my
Fantastic. Oh, I want it on a t-shirt. Find the magic.
Next step, we'll do merch. So actually, and another sort of answer to the question of where does all this come from? Where does all this magic come from? I mentioned at the beginning that my mum was very unwell. My mum is one of the reasons I'm like this. So, I mean, I know it's very easy to say blame the parents, and not in an obvious way. So my mum wasn't interested in witchcraft or anything like that. But she was just the most incredible person. And so I wrote this poem about my mum, and a lot of the poems in my collection, they're reimaginings or complete fiction, or they're, you know, exaggerated as poets do, and you twist things. This is the only poem in the collection, I think, where everything is 100% true. And it's about my mum. And also, when I wrote this, I was reading a lot of American poets, and I noticed a lot of American poets do this thing where they have really long titles for poems. And I didn't really understand it, but I was sort of in awe of it a bit, or a bit intimidated. Like, they must know something, they might have some great depth. So I thought I wanted to give my mum one of these grand titles for her poem. So I took a line from the Bible to explain, because it also explains a lot about my mum. So yeah, this is about my mum. It's a true story, and it is called "Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry." My mother taught me how to be a witch. Her silent craft didn't manifest to me until it was too late to reject the lessons, and by then I had no wish to unlearn them. In my last year of school, I was sent home with a note about my skirt, resting 1.3 centimetres above my knee. Mum read the rules carefully. Then she bought the longest skirt she could find in school colours, even though the frayed hem caught under the tread of my DMs. In the face of the administrator, I saw the moment my mother's soundless curse hit home. She mustered in me a mute defiance, a cure for petty regulation and arbitrary limits, and she did it all without ever saying a word. Her best tricks always took time to exert their power. When my older sister studied at that same school, she didn't own a big coat, and one cold day she wore a denim jacket under her blazer. Mum knew it was against the rules and wrote a note explaining that it was all she had, but detention followed anyway. For years, every time Mum visited the school for any of her 3 daughters, she wore a denim jacket and looked every teacher square in the eye. I could tell you more. Times when she stood taller than her usual 5'2", when she wouldn't move an inch, and the full extent of her long memory. From her, I've learned to brew fermented curses, proven inside the barrel staves of every time she took a stand, or stewed in a cauldron filled with moments when she wouldn't let go of doing what was right for her daughters. And the good thing
What
is,
a role model you had.
if you
What a
ask my
role
mum
model you
about
had.
that now, she would say, well, I was right to. They never should have done that. She would stand by everything she did, which is very funny.
Oh, she was right. Put on her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she was right. But I mean, the stubbornness, which I definitely have, you know, for years, nobody even knew why she was always turning up in a denim jacket, but she knew and we knew, and that was all that mattered. It was very funny. So we talked earlier about Tonya Harding. So I'll read the Tonya Harding poem. As I said, that I had this connection, and her treatment seemed very related to class, but also was related to that sort of fairy tale idea of a female villain and the kind of ugly stepsister, that sort of image of a bad woman, of an evil woman. So not quite a witch, but still definitely in the bad category. And
they almost, when she was the first woman to do a triple axel.
Yes. Oh, technically,
if I recall it,
yeah, she was
correctly.
phenomenal.
And there was very much sort of a, well, you're not the right person to have had that achievement.
Yes, it should have been someone better than you that's the first to achieve that. So although, I mean, and I don't know the ins and outs of, you know, she denies any involvement in the attack on Nancy Kerrigan, and it was all her boyfriend at the time. Who knows if she was involved or not? But I do think that she was villainized long before that happened. And yes, they'd already decided, but we wanted someone better than that to have that achievement, to break that record. And when I was thinking about her and thinking about fairy tales in the original version of the Cinderella story, so before we get the Disney version, you get the like truly horrific original fairy tales. And in that, the ugly stepsisters are punished by, they had iron shoes which they heated in the fire, put them on the stepsisters' feet and made them dance, which is horrific. What a horrific punishment. But I think just the iron shoes and the dancing made me think of her as well. So this is called Step. And it starts with a little epigraph, which is a quote from Tonya Harding, which is one I think we should all take to heart. She said, "No one controls my life but me. If there's something in there I don't like, I'm going to change it." Don't tell me you hadn't already made your mind up when I first put my blades onto the ice. When I skate, your fairy tale imagination murmurs to your eager eyes, asking for proof, and it doesn't take long to find it. Big hair, electric blue eyeliner, a frayed costume, and music blaring so loud you know without listening that, like me, it will be sweating and wicked. If you started earlier in the story, you'd see what it took to get here. You'd know how thick makeup hides scars and bruises. Broken nails are a sign of hard work, and every misstitch and sequin comes from a hand shaking after a long shift. It's not ladylike for you to know anything so inconvenient, and your ethics never extend to anyone who doesn't look like you. I wasn't plotting anything more than to hide those flaws, a pristine score to wear like a pelt. It doesn't matter that I try to hide the join. It will be circle like a foundation tide mark around my neck. When you see what you think is a cheap woman grow rich with talent, you take her for a brazen new bride to a hapless man, an unwanted, ugly stepsister born with a swinging hammer in her hand. Admit it. You had me cast as a villain long before a princess arrived on the scene. Tut and mutter over the notion of fair play if you must, and tell yourself the gaudy interloper deserved it. A competitor, but not a natural, you'll whisper, then hiss, not one of us. I always knew that. I read the same stories you did and watched the same movies. The only difference is that I didn't have to wait for your indictment. I already knew how stubborn this story would be, but so am I. Heat those iron shoes in a fire brash as a tabloid, strap them on my feet and I'll dance. That's not spite, honey, it's survival. I realized I said that in a very spiteful way, and I certainly didn't mean that for anyone here. Right, I've got three. Have I got time for three more poems? I've got three that I can just.
Of course.
Okay. So we talked a bit about evil women, and I thought I should, read one evil woman, and perhaps the most evil woman in my book is Elizabeth Bathory, who used to torture people, a lot of women, but actually just a lot of people. She was a rich, I think, countess, and she just tortured and murdered lots of people. But the reason she was doing it was to get beauty treatments. So she thought if she bathed in the blood of virgins, or she used, parts of other people's bodies to try and make herself more beautiful, she was obsessed with it. And she was eventually, after literally years, caught. And they bricked her up inside her own house, and that was her punishment. And I think it was quite a light punishment given all that she did. I don't recommend looking into what she did unless you have a very strong stomach. But the fact that she was doing all of this in pursuit of beauty, I'm not saying it's okay to do it in pursuit of power or money or anything, but just beauty, which you're never going to win that war. You're always going to get older. So, to do it for that just seems doubly horrific. So this is about Elizabeth Bathory, and it's called Maybe She's Born With It. These walls have ears and eyeballs and limbs and organs embedded in the brickwork. The bloody countess stained the foundation, contoured the bailey with buried bodies, and tossed others in locked rooms no one ever thought or dared to check. Thick stone muffled the screams, and while whispers travelled further than they should, it wasn't quite far enough. Elizabeth Bathory gave masonry a waterline. Walls wept as her dark desire insulated overlines into each of the 4 towers and smoothed the wrinkles around her iced eyes. She was chatelaine to chains, hot metal and sharp implements, queen of the last cut. She watched in panting fascination while women were stripped raw, doused in cold water or honey, left to freeze or be eaten alive. She bathed in the gore, her face smeared with human grease paint, coal-ringed eyes drawn on with blackened, charred remains. Her victims' names were perfume, infusing her with longing. She bore the final slap of vanity until she was bricked up against a world of reflections and died alone with her pitiless beauty. She is horrible. She's truly horrible. I don't know why she got in the book, except she is an exceptional woman, but just not in a good way. So the last 2 poems I'm going to read.
Well, I guess again, her action was probably the result of the expectations of her as a woman in the world, which doesn't excuse them. But what I loved, one of the things that I loved about this book, particularly when reading those monstrous women, was to sort of examine their contexts and the realization that it's never actually that simple.
Yeah, well, and the fact that, you know, she lived a long time ago, but was basically a sort of torturing serial killer, you know, like an awful person, but it was all in the pursuit of beauty. And if you're, well, probably I was going to say if you're a woman of my age, but probably if you're a woman of any age, you are chased around the internet with adverts about how to look more beautiful. You know, improve your hair, use this makeup, hide your age with this, do this, do this, do this. So it hasn't really changed, and the same strictures are there. Let's hope nobody else is going around torturing people just to try and get to look more beautiful. But people do mad things, you know. People do. Is it snake venom or some kind of venom, isn't it? Like Botox is just snake poison. In 100 years, people are going to...
Botox is actually pig botulism.
Oh, is it? Okay. So there you go. In 100 years, there's going to be a poet saying, do you know they used to inject botulism into their face to look younger? Like, it's insane. I'm proud of being older. I'm 50 this year, and I feel grateful to have made it this far. You know, why would I pretend otherwise? I've made it through nearly, I mean, touch wood, just got to get through December, but I've made it through nearly 50 years. That's to be celebrated, not hidden and pretend that I'm not. So, you know, well, maybe
woman after my own heart.
maybe something will change one day if enough of us just say, actually, I don't care. I don't care about what you think. You know, it's funny. But so I'm going to end after the darkness and some of the bleakness and some of the anger with a couple of magical poems. And the first one is that I mentioned earlier, Untold Fortunes. So this is the title collection, and I wrote this. As I said, I taught myself how to read the tarot, and I recorded what it told me about my past, present, and future. I put it all in a spreadsheet, which already tells you something about my future, that I'm the kind of person that puts these things in a spreadsheet. It tells you something about me for sure. But the information that gave out is what inspired this poem. I don't know. I find it very interesting. I don't know what I think about the tarot. I have a lot of respect for it. I don't know if I don't have the right connection to it, but what I did find very valuable was that every time I used them, I stopped and thought about my life. And so I don't know for me whether it's the tarot that's powerful, or actually in this life where you're just constantly, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, tick that off the list, got to go and do that. I owe somebody a phone call. If you just sit down and go, what's going on in my life? Where am I going? And if you do that regularly, do you kind of tap into that magic? Is it magic of itself? Anyway, so this is basically my tarot reading, and it's called Untold Fortunes. Beware of the past, it changes. Death may be a constant, but the shade of recollection can shift until all you see are a string of memories like unpatterned beads, catching the eye with iridescence and appearing as different colours depending on the light. So very enchanting until they slip their ribbon to bob about in dark water. All of your happy ever afters are two-sided cards. The world may promise to sit in the palm of your hand, but it will keep on spinning in darkness. Accept that the future has you in an unbreakable contract. Sign your name and mean it. The price of any alternative is your life. Seek the truth in the present, the now you're breathing in. A bowl of ice cream is truth, a niggling ache, a brush of hands, a fading bruise. Time unfolds second by second. This moment is entirely honest. And so I'm going to read one last poem. I think this is, you shouldn't have favorites. I don't want to say it too near the book because obviously all the poems are my babies and I shouldn't have favorites, but I think this might be my favorite. And I think it might have become so a few weeks ago. So I read this at my local library for National Poetry Day. I was reading poems from my collection as part of National Poetry Day. And my local library is the same library that I went to as a child. So when I was little, I used to go there and get my books, and to be back there reading my poems was wonderful, but particularly wonderful because it does include swearing, and I got to swear in my local childhood library, and just like child me, or I guess teenage me, because child me wouldn't have known that word, but child me was just thrilled at the idea. I should be more mature than that, but I wasn't. I thought it was a lot of fun. But the other reason I wanted to close with this was because this is a spell. So I said at the start that I think poetry is a form of magic. And so I wanted to write a poem that was a spell. And I wanted a spell for real life. So you know, there's lots of kind of esoteric, beautiful spells throughout history, but I wanted to write something that really works for people in their day-to-day lives and in modern life. So this is for when you wake up and you have one of those days where nothing goes right and it feels like the whole world is against you and you just want to curl up in a ball and cry. This is for one of those days, and it's called Spell for a Better Day. The shrill horror of the alarm clock, the stubbed toe, the toothpaste stain on your shirt, the smell of hot coffee breath from a man standing too close on the train, the routine delays, the bruised and already overripe banana, the bitter taste of a swallowed scream, the surprise deadlines, the spot forming on your chin, the number on the scales, your split ends, your split family, the hairline crack of pressure, the moment you had to smile through your tears, the way light fell on your face to spotlight all your flaws, the shadow of an angry moon. Wrap this day into a tight ball, swallow it with red wine at midnight. Keep it with all the other days, each one wrapped in a violet ribbon embroidered by silver needles in gold thread with the words, "Fuck you, I'm still here." Okay.
What a way to bring it home.
And obviously I mean that to the bad day. I don't mean that to the lovely people here.
Fantastic. I have really enjoyed this conversation with you, Zoe. So thank you for answering all of my questions, even the ones that I didn't have to ask, which was again a bit of mind reading action going on. Again, everyone, Zoe's collection Untold Fortunes is available at Animal Heart Press, and I've popped a link to that in the chat. So if you would like to order a copy, we can get them shipped out to you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. To Dean and Kate, thank you for blessing us with your presence and for your beautiful readings and support of Zoe's work and our work here at the Press.